Hey, Countdown to the Geeks. Hey, Retro Ray back again, and we have Nasser with us.
What's going on?
How was your weekend, Nasser?
Awesome, man. It was free comic book day. It's like a comic book lover Christmas, right? So,
Hey, there's some good stuff to pick up, man, and then we got some stuff to talk about that as well. We'll talk about that once we get started. But of course, I'm going to give a quick shout out to Dragons Lair Alamo Ranch. Without them, I wouldn't be able to do comic reviews uh, and get all the sneak peeks on stuff. Dragons Lair Alamo Ranch is here in San Antonio off of 1604. If you're a gamer for D&D, Warhammer, Pokemon, One Piece, you definitely want to go hang out there. Nice, chill room. Everybody's cool. You can just chit chat. If you have questions about playing the games, people are always welcome to they'll answer your questions for you. Great staff. Come check us out. And then we're gonna get Nasser too. Let's get this one squared away as well. Nasser, what do you got for us?
well, we've got November 15th, as you can see there on the screen later this year. We've got Casa. This will be year 4 of Comic Arts San Antonio, our show that focuses exclusively on comic book writers and artists. So if you're a fan of comic books, if you want to meet the people who make the comic books, we just announced Rick Leonardi, the co-creator of Spider-Man 2099. So if you know Spider-Man 2099 from the comics, if you just recently learned about him from the Into the Spider-Verse movies, definitely come out, check it out. We'll be announcing more guests. And while you're there, you might find your new your new favorite comic from an indie creator, like the one we'll be talking to today.
Yes, definitely. Guys, if you don't know, um, Kevin Garcia has written a current book. Um, if you're a wrestling fan, you're gonna love this book. And then he's also done some other stuff for Marvel. He worked there for 10 years. We'll ask about that as well. But it's not waiting any longer. Let's get Kevin into the room and let's start chit chatting with Kevin. What's going on, sir?
Yo, it's good to be here, man. Good to be here, and good to see Nasser again. I went to Casa for the first time last year, and it was it was amazing, honestly.
Thank you.
Nice.
I got to go there because of this guy right here, Freddie Lopez Jr., the cover artist. He kept telling me about it, telling me about it, telling me about it. He's like, "You gotta go, you gotta go, you gotta go," and I was like, "You know what? I gotta go."
And that's funny because that was Freddie's first time too. So
Oh wow.
Freddie gives me all kinds of flack about. We've known each other from like way back, and since he wasn't actually working on comics, he was doing fantasy art and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I hadn't approached him about having a table at Casa, and he's just like, "Well, what the heck, man?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm sorry. We're friends. Your art's amazing, but this is exclusively for comic book creators." And so,
I think he
once
actually told me, he's like, "Well, because I did your cover, I've done comics now, so I get to go."
yeah. And now him and Sherry are working on their own comics. So
Oh, hell yeah.
I like to think that I inspired that so he could come again to Casa.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mentioned that he does fantasy art and stuff, but what I love about him is that he's just so versatile. He does Transformers to Yoda to realistic people to, whatever. The second I came up with this idea for this, political war story with superheroes, I was like, I want Freddie to do the cover. And I told that to my girlfriend, and I was like, yeah, I just want him to do the cover. And then when I actually did approach him about it, it was cool.
Yeah.
It was really cool. And just does amazing work.
No, I agree. I've had him do custom pieces for when I worked at Heroes. He did a Master Chief in front of the Alamo. He did an awesome piece for Free Comic Book Day when Guardians of the Galaxy was gonna be coming out, and it's basically the Rocket Raccoon, um, Drax, and they're all running like away from the comic book store, and they have books like they're stealing them. That one was my favorite that he had done, but then also Master Chief was awesome as well. And then he did a Power Ranger one for I think it was the 20th anniversary, I think, or 30th. He did a cool, mock of to promote the event. And then he drew me and himself in the comic as well. That was awesome as well. But anyways,
I should have grabbed it because years ago I used to do these free like geek movie events at the Alamo Draft House or one of the locations here in San Antonio. And so like every month we would show like a nerd movie, and we would have an exclusive print, and the artist would be there to sign it. And Freddie did one for Ninja Turtles. So,
Oh,
and I've still
dang.
got, I've got the print, and I've got the original pencils that he gave me.
The
Oh,
turtles are surprisingly hard for people to draw. Like a lot of fans will think, oh, they're so easy. They're just the turtles, but it's like it's because you grew up with it. But like
Yeah.
so many artists struggle with it. He does some great turtles.
Yeah. Well, he loves turtles, so I'm sure he's been drawing them all his life.
yeah. Turtles, I don't think that, we're never going to get that end of them. It just seems like they're giving us more and more stories. I don't know, you guys, did you watch the animated movie by chance?
I did.
I haven't yet.
It was. Go watch it right now, please. You can pause. No, it is. It is really. I am. I'm not a fan of Seth Rogen on the whole,
Mhm.
but I do end up liking a lot of stuff he makes, and that one was just amazing. In fact, I only have one slight quibble with it, and that is that they cast Jackie Chan as Splinter. That should have been George Takei. Like,
Oh.
alright.
if you're gonna come on, like seriously, like you're gonna have the Japanese master coming here, it should have been George Takei.
Mhm.
And I don't get me wrong, Jackie Chan's cool, but like kung fu, ninjutsu, karate, different
Yeah.
countries.
I've heard nothing but good things about it, so I do
No,
need to watch that.
it is an amazing movie. It is an amazing movie. I'm not kidding. It blew me away at how good it was. I didn't think it was going to be that good, but it definitely is into the Spider-Verse levels of like wow,
That's cool.
So we just past weekend, we went for May the 4th at La Cantera the Rock. And they had a marathon from New Hope to Empire Strikes Back to Return of the Jedi. We talked
I'm sorry.
to
What
everyone.
franchise is that? Those aren't turtle movies.
They're not turtle movies, but I'm getting there. So the person that does the events this summer, they're going to be doing the summer of superheroes. So
Nice.
every Sunday they're going to be doing movies. But I wanted to do. I'm like, dude, because we know Nicholas, who does the voice for Leonardo in that movie, and he's from San Antonio, huge Spurs fan. So I told Ted, I was like, hey man, we need to do a turtle movie. Show the turtle movie here. We got to bring Nicholas down, do a meet and greet for the fans, and he's a big Spurs fan. Dude, what more can you want? That's a perfect combination right there. Because yeah, the movie was great. The artwork, at first it took me some time to grow on me, but I did like the artwork.
For which version? Oh, you mean the animated movie?
Yes, the animated movie.
Yeah. Because they were doing something different. They were
Yeah.
the one thing that sold me on the artwork, because it is so different from anything you've ever seen before. Oh, except for maybe Rise, which is also very, very different in its own way. What sold me is that this is the first iteration of Turtles that I have ever seen, and I've been with them since the beginning, in which they actually felt like teenagers.
Yeah.
Like they were played by teenagers. They moved like teenagers. It felt like you're actually watching teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and not just cool dudes with attitude that say the turtles.
Yeah.
Which again, I grew up with it. I love it, but those were actually like this felt more authentic than any other version of Turtles ever for that reason alone.
It's
Yeah,
the Hollywood tradition of like mid 20-year-olds playing teenagers.
Yeah,
Come
well,
on,
or
Kevin.
30-year-olds playing teenagers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, yeah. If we go back to the 90210 days, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Smallville too was the same way. But anyway, Kevin, we got to talk about you. You're a teacher by day, and at night,
I am
You're
the
Batman.
vengeance. Oh, right. Okay, here we go. Yeah, you're not supposed to tell people that. My butler's going to get after me.
Well, we've never seen them in the same room together.
I know,
so-
right?
Actually, no, that's not true. There's a picture of me on Facebook that has Batman punching me, and there's a giant pow sound effect behind us. So that is evidence that I am not a particular Cape Crusader.
That's your friend Clark dressed up as Batman.
Actually, yeah. The guy that played Batman there has also dressed as Clark Kent. I have a picture of me and him as Clark Kent. So yes.
Oh man, that's freaking awesome. So, how do you do it, sir? How do you juggle your day job as a teacher and writing stuff?
Well, the
comics
key
and
is
stuff
you
like
don't
that?
sleep. Eating is optional. No. Yeah, no. I teach. I teach high school. I've been teaching high school now for about 18 years. In fact, people who don't know teachers are usually like, "Oh, well, you got so much time off. You have the whole summer and everything." The thing is, it takes a lot out of you emotionally and mentally. It's like it's exhausting.
Yeah.
But that being said, as long as I've had jobs, since I was like 18, 19 years old, I've always had multiple jobs. So I've always do things around. So I would write around that. When I worked at Marvel, that was a secondary job, and everybody in our department had other jobs. I like pointing out the head of the head writer of the official handbooks of the Marvel Universe at the time. His day job was the head of veterinary medicine in North Florida.
Whoa.
So like that's I don't know how you balance that time.
Yeah.
So like yeah, you do that, but at the same time it's cool because I like to say I try to impress the kids with what I do. They really don't care, but I do. On the flip side, get to find out stuff they care about. Like one thing I hear a lot of people tell me, "Oh, kids these days aren't reading comic books." Those kids are reading comics every day,
Yeah.
webtoons, but they're comics.
I
Or
thought
like a lot
about
of the
that,
Scholastic stuff, Dave
Oh, yeah, that too.
Filkey,
Oh.
Amulet, Raina
100%.
Telgemeier. Yeah.
Yeah, I just met Kazu just a couple weeks ago actually,
Hmm.
but yeah, the Amulet, Bone, all those things.
Yeah, that's why when people are like, "Well, comics are dying" or something, it's like, well, maybe a certain segment of
They're
comics,
evolving. They
yeah,
always
yeah.
have been.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, people at one point thought digital was going to kill physical copies.
Yeah.
When they were doing you buy the copy and then also you can buy the one that gives you the digital as well. That didn't fly very long. I mean, don't get me
It's still
wrong.
technically around, I think.
It is, but it's like, I don't know about you guys. I'm more still physical. I tried the iPad thing.
I
didn't work
am
for
more.
me.
I literally, while I was waiting to get on, I've been reading
Yeah.
Spider Boy on my phone.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm the old man then. Okay.
No. You want to know why though? You want to know why? Because I had somewhere around. I counted it once. I had 5,000 comics.
Whoa.
That was in 1994. It's exponentially grown since then. So about 3 years ago, I sold 99% of my comics all at once, one big bulk. And I told the guy I was selling it to, I was like, look, there's some stuff in there, like first appearance of Adam Warlock and some other stuff. I know, but most of them are going to be 90s stuff. Got to be upfront with you about that.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, why don't you go through it and sell it all? You make so much more money. I'm like, yeah, I know. But because I don't have that time or effort,
But
I'm
the
selling you
time that it
bulk.
takes to do that, yeah.
You go through it, you sell it, and I've run into him since. You make any good money off it? He's like, yeah. I'm like, hey, good. See,
Yeah.
but it paid off my student loans. So there you go. So now I mostly buy digital, and I buy digital because I want to support the artists and the writers. So I buy digital from Marvel and DC and Image, and then the ones that I buy physically are going to be ones that aren't likely to show up in Marvel and DC catalogs online. Ones that are indie comics. Also, really obscure, weird stuff that Marvel's ashamed of. Those kinds of things I buy physically. So I do have a collection still, but it's mostly indie, except for one thing. There's one thing I did not get rid of: the entire run of Archie's Ninja Turtles, because that's my gateway drug.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, same thing for me. It's just a space issue,
Yep.
I don't have room for long box after long box, and even like collected editions, I'm starting to run out of room here. So, and these, like you said, Ken, it's mostly indie stuff, or it's the stuff that I love so much that like I have to own like a nice bound collected edition of it. So
when I was collecting my stuff to sell, there was boxes I didn't know I had.
Mhm.
Like I knew I had a whole bunch at my house and a whole bunch at my dad's house. Turns out a friend of mine has had a whole bunch at his house for a while too. And I was like, oh, I have like 10 more boxes.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no reason for me to hold on to a bunch of the stuff that I had. I had every Civil War tie-in and every Countdown and 52 tie-in and stuff like that, so.
And even some of the stuff I kept because I was like, I'm going to keep the things that Marvel will never reprint. Marvel then reprinted Coyote from its line from back in the early 90s, late 80s that I thought that would never get published. And then they also just recently reprinted Rom and Micronauts. So I'm like,
yeah,
there goes that. I bought the digital of Godzilla's because I had to get that.
Yeah,
it's just like,
and even stuff they don't own the rights to anymore, like those big, beautiful like Transformers and GI Joe and all those have been coming out from now IDW, right?
Yeah, that's right, because they removed the little Marvel logo and printed it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So yeah, man, collected for me and stuff that I don't need to own digital. So
I have the trade of Bill and Ted by Evan Dorkin, which is so good, so amazingly better than you'd think it would be. And because the trade was put up by, I want to say IDW or somebody, they had to remove any Marvel references in the book, which is kind of funny. But still, it's still a great book.
Yeah.
Well, see, the damn covers is what still kills me. At Comic Capsule, though, hold up. I had this baby sitting in my box for the longest time because I didn't get it graded, didn't get it slabbed, because to buy a frame for that is kind of hard. And then the UV protected part. This is freaking genius. You can pop the top off, pull your comic out, and hang it on the wall.
I'm going to say something controversial. I am not a fan of permanently slabbing comics because I think they should be read. I understand why, and I appreciate that people are doing it for certain issues, or even for all of them. If there's like one per issue somewhere, but like most of them should be read. People are like, "Why do you handle these things? Why do you let kids hold them?" I'm like, "Because I want them to see them."
Yeah.
I like pointing out I have some magazines published by Marvel before Marvel made comic books, and I don't mean 61. I mean before Marvel Comics #1, because the company that made Marvel made pulp magazines for decades.
Mhm.
And I've got like Joe Simon and Jack Kirby art before Marvel Comics #1, and it's like I will let people look at it because you should.
Yeah. Well, and
And
so much
that's
of
the
that
reason
old
why.
stuff is worth something now
Well-
because kids were folding it up and putting it in their back pocket and stuff like that, you know?
So, okay, actually, I'm actually kind of annoyed about that because the reason I have so much of it is because nobody knew what it was, and so I was enjoying buying it for like $5 to $20 each,
Hmm.
and now they're hundreds of dollars each, and I'm like, damn it, I could afford it before.
Yeah.
I gotta stop telling people what's in them.
Yeah. And everything is so protected and bagged and boarded and slabbed now that, like, there's just too many of them out there in great condition anytime you want to find something, you know?
No, it is, and that's
Which
the
is
reason
awesome
why.
if you just want to go buy it and, like you said, read it.
And like I said, that's the reason why I like these. 'Cause
Yeah,
you
I
can
like
just-
that. A resealable
Boom.
one, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, because you just pull it out and boom, you can read it.
Mhm.
And
I mean, you can't get it graded like that, but you could definitely keep it like that. It'll still be safe.
yeah, and the UV protection, that's the biggest thing, because like if you have the lights in your room, that's the biggest thing. Because especially, okay, I'm an art guy, Nasser. I'm kind of surprised. The variant covers, that's what gets me. That's what really hurts me is when they do the cool covers. You're not even reading the book. You're not reading that series, but that cover pulls you in. You know what I mean?
No, variant covers, man, it just makes me have 90s flashbacks. So,
Okay, I have a stupid issue with variant covers, and that is I keep buying them by accident because I keep forgetting which issues I have, and I'm like, oh, I don't have this issue, and I buy it, and I get home, and I'm like, I own this issue. I own 3 of this issue.
yeah, they all just have different covers.
Yes.
Yeah.
They look
But-
so pretty though.
They do, though. I can't argue with that. I have a friend who he commissions people a lot to do variant covers, like with shoot, who has the Street Fighter license? But he
You
commissions, yeah, but he commissions them a lot to do hire artists to do covers, variant covers for them. So he does that.
Oh wow.
What I wish
That-
Marvel and DC would do at the end of the year, put together a variant cover like collection. Be like, hey, this is every variant that was on Uncanny X-Men this year.
They used to do something like that with the Marvel Masterworks. They used
yeah.
to, yeah, they used to have Marvel Masterworks, not the books Masterworks, but the cards Marvel Masterworks. They
Mhm.
made, they used to sell a magazine version that was like some of the variant covers. Before that was a big thing in the middle, like post
Yeah.
90s boom, and now it was wasn't there, but also other art pieces that didn't get published other places, and like
Yeah.
they put them all in a big comic. I wish they would do more of those because it'd be like then you could have just the art.
Yeah, see, that'd be amazing. Like if there was a big book of like, hey, this is every Spider-Man or Amazing Spider-Man variant that we published this year, I'd be more likely to buy that than to buy every variant copy every month. But they want you to buy every variant copy every month to bump up the numbers, right?
I admit I kind of like those sketch covers though. Those are pretty cool, the blank ones, because
Really?
it's fun to have
Oh,
somebody
dude,
just
don't
like
even get me started
doodle
on
it.
that.
Yeah.
I have
Don't.
a one I had X-Men cover that I had Eric Larson draw, and I had him do the Malcolm Dragon running away from a Sentinel. That's pretty
Oh,
cool.
nice. That's cool.
Oh, dude, I had who was it? I had okay. So I have one that just has pretty much all the people who have drawn Harley Quinn
Nice.
sign it. Yeah, and I have now this is the thing, I didn't since I had everybody write their names on it, I only had enough room to do one Harley Quinn piece. But it's kind of like there's so much you can do. Like, okay, I have a Herb Trimpe when it was Nasser when you bought him to Big Texas, I think or not TikTok,
Texas Comic-Con.
Texas
Really?
Comic-Con.
That's so cool.
Yeah, back in the day, I was the Artist Alley coordinator for Texas Comic-Con.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and he did I had him recreate the first appearance of Wolverine. So I had him sign it on the sketch cover, and then I also had Herb sign it before he passed away.
That's
And
beautiful.
that is my pride and joy. Now I can display it with this because it was in a box the whole time. And
Hashtag
I'm
not
like,
sponsored.
yes, yeah. Comic Capsule is freaking awesome,
Yeah,
guys.
reach out to Ray.
I had the opportunity once to get a sketch cover done by Art Adams, and I didn't do it. I'm still kicking myself to this day about it because
I've worked with a lot of celebrities because I also do host Q&As at Comic Cons and
Oh,
stuff.
nice.
And I've worked with a lot of celebrities, and I also was a reporter back in the day. And the only time I've ever fanboyed out was meeting Art Adams. And it was funny because there was like a line around the block for his neighbor who was J. Scott Campbell. But like every poster on my wall as a kid was Art Adams, you know,
That's
every
awesome.
poster. And I was like, oh my God, why is not everybody here for you? And he's like, I don't know. It's a good question.
But no,
And he'd offer to do a cover for me, and I was like, I don't think I should. And then the next day, I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? Why did I say that?
Yeah.
I'm still kicking myself.
hey man, you got to jump at the chance. I've learned my lesson. I had an opportunity to go to a convention to meet one actor that I really wanted to meet. I don't know if you guys remember the TV show Airwolf.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, not John.
I'm that age.
Yeah, John Michael Vincent, not him, but the co-pilot. I forgot his name off the top of my head right now, but he was at HorrorCon, and I was like, oh no, I'll get him next time. Maybe he'll come closer to San Antonio. Dude, 6 months after that, he passed away, and I was like, I'm like, you know what? If it's somebody I really, really want to meet, I'm gonna do it because you never know when you're gonna miss out.
I had a similar situation like that. I said I was a reporter, right? Back when I was like 19, 20, I was a reporter for city. Yeah, for about 10 years, give or take. It overlapped with starting teaching, but for 5 years, I was just a reporter. And I interviewed a bunch of people, Stanley and Guillermo del Toro, right before Hellboy came out, and a bunch of other people. But the one I didn't do was Douglas Adams. I had I found his agent's contact, but I was such a massive fan that I was like, I need an excuse. What excuse do I do? What excuse? How can I? Oh shoot! What do I interview him about? I found the contact. What do I do? I sat on it for like 2 months, and then he passed away with a sudden heart attack. And I was like, damn.
Yeah.
Damn. And I was like, because I just, I was such a fanboy of him,
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I started doing Casa. We were losing so many of the greats in comics, and I'm never going to get to meet Joe Kubert or Steve Ditko or a lot of these guys, John Romita Sr., stuff like that. So just like part of Casa is me inviting some of my favorite creators so I can meet them.
Yep, that's
Hey, as long as it works.
Yeah. Hey, it's a thing, man, and that's the thing when we love writers and artists because that was our childhood, and the stuff they're doing now is great. Kind of the same thing. Like I even I interviewed Liz Kakowski from Star Trek, and I asked her the same question I asked the artist I interview. Between digital and original, do you do half and half? Because majority of some of the new artists are just doing full digital now. They're not even doing half and half.
I remember I was amazed when I found out that Fiona Staples. Yeah, when I found out she was only doing digital at the time, that was novel because like she did one book where she penciled, and after that, everything she's done is digital. And I was like, wow, I can't believe she does that. Now it's unlikely to find the other way around.
Yeah.
Yep. And when I talked to Chad Harden, he mentioned that when you do that, you're leaving money on the table, not doing original art or doing, pages and stuff like that, because that's additional money you can get and sell on the side.
Especially for covers.
Well, there's like a hybrid model. I know David Marquez does all his covers physically, and then his pages he does digitally, and he sells artist proofs of that.
See, that would
so
make sense.
It's still a 1-of-1. He's never going to reprint that, and you own the only copy of that'll ever be produced.
Yeah.
And I have a couple of those. Adrian Gutierrez, who worked on Blue Beetle, I have an artist proof from his Blue Beetle run, and then David Baldion. He did a Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider series with J.M. DeMatteis, and I have an artist proof from that run. So yeah, no, it's
Nice.
still an original. It might not be pencils, but you'll be the only one that ever has it.
True. That is true. Well, getting back to Kevin, this is the question. Getting to write the cinematic universe for the guidebook.
So,
How was it
well,
working on that?
on that one, I barely did like 3 paragraphs, but I'm in it as a
Okay,
writer.
you're in it. Yes, but that's not the only thing you did though.
No, yeah, I was with as I mentioned earlier, I was with the official handbook of the Marvel Universe for about 10 years. I say 10 years. There was a little bit I did where they didn't pay me at the beginning, and a little bit I did they didn't pay me at the end. Those were just called special thanks, which is cool. I still got my name in there. I still listed on my website. I'm like, these are the ones I have special thanks for. I didn't get paid for those, but special thanks. But yeah, I was there for 10 years, and it was fun to have done. And people ask me all the time, how'd you get it? And it's simple, same story everybody else says, begging and pleading. No, what happened is that the original handbooks, which by the way, I'm sure you guys know this, but I like repeating it to people, for especially your listeners. You guys seen Loki, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, you know Mobius from Loki?
Yeah.
Do you know who Mobius from Loki is based on?
No.
No, I
See,
don't.
he was based on the guy that created the original handbooks in the 80s. Mark
Oh.
Gruenwald was an editor in the 80s, and he was so obsessed with continuity and making sure everything fit in order that when
Yeah.
they created a guy whose job it was to keep the timeline straight, they based the drawing on him. So the
Okay.
mustache and everything, that's
Yeah.
because it was Mark Gruenwald. That's why I'm
Okay.
so annoyed at the show Loki when they said his real name was Don or something. What the hell?
Like, no, it's not.
Just say Mark. Just say Mark. It's all you had to say. Anyway, Mark, he actually got to write himself once before he died. He died young of cancer.
Yeah.
But he got to write himself once. There's one appearance of Mobius written by Mark Gruenwald, which is so cool. But anyway, he created the original handbooks, and they were basically just the gold standard for everything there. I mean, obviously DC would have Who's Who, I think came after. I'm not sure which came first, but either way. And I grew up on that. I loved it as a kid. When the early 2000s, Marvel wanted to bring that stuff back, and they figured, well, this is before Wiki, just keep in mind, any kind of Wiki, even Wikipedia. They were like, well, look, the fans are already making websites about the heroes. Let's just have them write it. So they reached out to some of the prolific ones and said, why don't you guys do it? And I knew some of these guys a little bit online, and I had my own websites. I had some like Golden Age websites. I had one dedicated to just skin of Generation X. That's a whole personal thing. And I had like 3 or 4 websites. I had one about just Red Raven because I figured I was his only fan. And I told these guys, hey, look, I know you guys too. I'm a professional writer. I'm working as a newspaper reporter. I've been, can I go with you? And they were like, no, we don't know you that well. And then a couple years later, they contacted me and said, hey, look, we know you have Red Raven's first appearance. We need to borrow that for something. I had a microfiche of it, not the actual comic.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I'll lend it to you. But by this point, I have been a professional writer for 10 years. Let me do something for Marvel. And they were like, fine. So then I stayed there for 10 years.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Without even knowing it, I'm sure I read all kinds of stuff because I love the handbooks. I love the Who's Who, all that stuff where I could just like read about their powers and their abilities and stuff. Like that's why I love the old Marvel Universe cards where they had the ratings on the back of what their powers were.
That's why when I did World's War Comics, I always tell people the story is about what it feels like and the emotions and this and that, and not about the powers or what their origins were. But everybody kept asking, what are their powers and what are their origins? So I ended up making cards that are in the style of the old cards for each of the characters.
Oh,
so
man, that's cool.
So like you don't need this backstory to read the story, but if you read it, you're like, oh, I know what's happening in that panel because I read the card. I know what's going on there.
Darn it! Like, I need those cards now.
Yeah. I was at Free Comic Book Day this past week, and there was this little girl. She'd be like 12, 13, and she wanted to buy every alternate cover I had because she loved the story. When I told her about it, she was so excited. And her parents were like, you can get them all. So she bought all of them, and I was like, I also have these cards. I'm selling them, for $3 each. Or if you want to buy all the set of 9 of them, it's $20. And I go, but you're already buying everything. Just take them. And I just gave her the cards.
Save one of those packs of 9 for me.
Yeah, well,
Perfect for a card sheet.
That's why I do
9 slots.
Everybody's like, why did you do 9? Why not 10? I'm like, because that's not how card sheets are.
Yeah, the people that collected cards know why.
And I had so much fun making them that I told people that as I keep going with the series, I want to keep making more cards. So just to kind of add to it.
Are you familiar with Chris Stevens and his cards that he's doing on Golden Age Blue Beetle and that kind of stuff?
No, actually, wait. Yes, I think I am. I don't think I know him personally, but I do. When you said Golden Age Blue Beetle card, I have seen that.
Yeah, those are super cool too.
Yeah, I do love the idea. Which is the thing is in the book itself. In the book itself, at least the special edition, I have the actual background of who the characters were originally, and it
Oh, so
gives
I have
you
the special edition.
yeah.
Cool.
Well, because I honestly I had to do something with the backers. I felt bad, that it took me an extra month or so than I thought it was going to take me.
Yeah, yeah.
So then I was like, I'm going to put extra. So I just added it, packed it up in there. But then, so the order, if you get it on like indieplanet.com or comic or Global Comics, it doesn't have all those bonus things in the back.
Mhm.
But anyway, that one was like the actual real world background of the characters. But on the cards, it's like they're, the story of
Do you have a power graph too?
So on the cards, each one is designed like a different decade.
Oh, okay.
So the first two cards are 1950s. Those don't have a power graph, but they do have wins, losses, did you know facts, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And then the one card is from the 1960s, and it's based entirely off of Mars Attacks.
Okay.
And then the three middle cards are all based on the 90s cards of Marvel and DC. So those have power bars and all the and also the face without their mask on, so you get to see them. In fact, those are the only three characters in the comic that you don't see without a mask on.
Yeah.
So they get to see them without a mask in the cards. And then the last cards are the Marvel Masterworks cards I was talking about earlier. And then the last card is not based on Marvel Snap. But the point
inspired by
I wanted them all to be like through the decades. The idea being that these characters have a history. So I actually did all that.
Where's the hologram?
Yeah, I know. Well, I actually looked into that. I was like, is that possible? I was like looking. I don't think it is possible. I don't think if you find somebody that can print a reasonably priced hologram card, I will do that.
Nice. Maybe lenticular or something.
Yeah, something shiny. There are people that do like metal stuff and like
Oh yeah, that's
what's it called, the foil. But yeah, there are people that do that.
Yeah, that's cool.
But
yeah, like I was saying, Kevin, yeah, I loved all that kind of stuff, man. Like even the master edition of the Marvel Handbook, I love those.
Everybody thought looked weird as kids, but like that's what the actual artists needed to see the full 360 of the characters.
Yeah, and then put them in your 3-ring binder and stuff. Yeah, so super cool, man. I love that you add all that extra stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, so back to the thing about with the handbooks is that it was fun to do. While that book that you showed an example of, I only did a couple paragraphs. The one I'm most proud of is this one right here.
Yes, the Namor.
Yeah, so Namor, the First Mutant #1. It's also in the Namor, the First Mutant Volume 1. If you get the trade, the last 8 pages are by me, and it was supposed to be the life story of Namor in 8 pages, and they were like, I asked them, can I do this in the voice of a character? And somebody told me, no, you can't do that because if you do, it's going to have to be problems. If you're not a professional writer like that, they're going to send it back and you have to start over again. It's going to be extra work. I said, let me try. So I did, and they kept it. So the whole thing is in the voice of Namora, who had a crush on him for 80 years and didn't get to tell him this. Well, didn't get to actually kiss him until like about a year before this comic came out. So it's all her telling his life story as a file that she's giving to Jimmy Woo about Namor. Yeah. So that was so much fun to do. And what really pisses me off to no end is that if you get Marvel Unlimited, which I have, you could read Namor, the First Mutant #1, and they did not include my pages.
Oh,
so it's in the physical editions only.
Oh man.
So that's sought after.
Is that a royalty thing? Is that they don't want to pay you on digital royalties, or
not? What I've been told is that sometimes they save the saga stuff, which is what this technically is listed as a Marvel saga. Sometimes they save the saga stuff for like special events. So like if Namor were to ever show up in a movie, they would post it. They didn't. Okay. But I wouldn't get paid extra for it, really. The only way I would get paid extra is if something I contributed to sold over X number of issues, and nothing I have ever has, including this one.
Wow. I mean, okay, even with the movie Namor or the movie dropping of Namor, I mean, you would have thought, you know what I mean?
I don't know. Maybe one day Marvel will be like, "Oh, hey, he's that guy that did that wrestling book. Let's put that Namor thing finally on the website."
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think Namor has like definitive runs that people think of, other than like the John Byrne. You know.
Oh, I can go off on a rant on this one. Namor is my favorite character, which took me a lot of thought to get to. By the way, for the longest time, I tell people I don't have a favorite child, right? But I will grant you, there's never been a definitive run. There's never like even the John Byrne one is probably the most famous run, but definitely not the definitive run.
Yeah.
He doesn't have like, oh, there's the Demon in the Bottle story, or there's
Yeah.
Onslaught, or there's Onslaught's a bad example. Age of Apocalypse, go with that one. There's the Dark Phoenix saga. There's we don't have that for No More. It doesn't exist. It's just he has the potential. As I explain to people, he is Marvel's first superhero. He was technically ready to be published before Marvel Comics #1, so I'm going to give him that credit. He's also Marvel's first supervillain. He's also the first hero to fly under his own power. Superman used to just leap tall buildings. He is also the reason comic book universes exist. Keep in mind that back in the day, every character had their own story. Their Superman stories, Batman stories. They didn't cross over. The first time Marvel crossed over was because all of the heroes had to stop No More from constantly attacking New York. So the Marvel universe exists because of No More. So I will be his defender. But like, why did I get into this rant? Why did I?
Because we brought up the movie.
You're telling us
book.
about the back matter you wrote on it.
Yeah. But anyway, the point is, near and dear to my heart. And so when he was in the movie, I was pretty excited about it.
Well, that brings up something. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rick.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, Kevin. So you're working on handbooks and stuff for all that time. During that time, are you trying to get them to give you a shot on a story or something like that?
So I was there for 10 years, and that was a couple times I got to write as a character. I got to write that one of my own volition. Sometimes they were like, well, here's the story. Everybody is writing as Steve Rogers writing. And when I say everybody, the team, like 10 of us, give or take at any given time, is writing a dossier for the president from Steve Rogers. So technically that's in the voice of Steve Rogers. I made sure to say that Bucky had moxie. I was very proud of myself for putting that in there. So I wrote those, but I didn't get to write an original story. Occasionally I could fill in the blanks of characters who were barely there and give them a backstory or whatever with permission from the editors or whatever, but that's not the same. So I actually asked once, I was like, hey, can I do an original comic? And they were like, well, what else have you published? And so now I'm publishing elsewhere. Now, mind you, if Marvel were to call me back, I would show up again. But yeah, it's reasonable. People ask me how to break into comics, and the thing is, we go back in time, right? Jim Shooter started in comics when he was like 14, and he got in because he literally wrote a letter to DC saying, "I have a cool idea for a Legion story," and they're like, "Okay, write it," and so that's how he got started. Then by the 90s, the boom and bust kind of era, you could send Marvel, here's my spec script or here's my art, hire me, and they might give you a job, they might not, they might give you some criticism or give you some feedback or whatever, or maybe just we're not interested, right? But come 2005 or so, they stopped doing that. Part of that's for legal reasons, because people would start to claim, well, I sent them a story about a time that Iron Man and Dr. Doom switched faces and then it happened. So then it's my story they stole. Like that's, come on, that's a pretty basic kind of story. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they want to protect themselves, but also because they were getting inundated, they're pretty big.
Yeah.
So they stopped accepting blind submissions, basically. And now at this point, Marvel and DC eventually did the same. They reach out to you if they want you to write for them. It helps if you publish something. It may be so that they have also, especially with Marvel Voices, they've reached out to a lot of people who are journalists and public speakers who have opinions on topics. But for the most part, if you publish somewhere else and they like it, they might contact you.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Yeah, and it must be so much harder for a writer because, like you said, they don't want to read your script, just like you said, because of legal reasons. But while an artist, I can take my portfolio and they can quickly tell, like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing with sequential storytelling. Let's give him a shot. So,
and apparently that does still occasionally happen at conventions, but not by mail like it used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned, I didn't know this when I interviewed Carlo.
Barbary,
yeah, I didn't know.
Barbary.
I mean, I worked with them, with heroes and stuff, and I never knew that for issue 100 of Wizard, he entered a contest and he won to get his artwork published on that cover. I never knew that until
Mark Bagley on the tryout book, right? That's another famous one.
Basil Wolverton back in the 40s, he got his start through a contest.
Wow.
It was a Little Abner contest to draw. I think it was Little Abner, but it was something, or maybe it was Mad Mag. No, it was Mad Mag. Wasn't around yet. But it basically draw the ugliest woman possible, and he did it. It was so ugly. They're like, what the hell? But
It's crazy. I mean, those are the great days. I mean, I don't know. It's just my opinion. Like when you could write the comic books, submit a letter, even for Wizard. Wizard to me, I don't know about you guys. I looked forward to buying Wizard
Oh yeah, I did.
because they would always have the up and coming artists, up and coming writers, and then the cool things they had in there too. You know,
to this day, I remember they had a Captain America versus Batman, and they were talking to the current writers at the time. And Mark Waid said, yeah, they're both great fighters. Captain America is probably a better fighter, but Batman cheats, so Captain America loses. And I was like, I just love that idea that like the writer of Captain America goes, he would lose because Batman cheats. And I'm like, all right.
Though that, like I said, those were the best times reading those magazines. And then of course this was pre-movies because you know they'd be like, oh, you know, this character would be good to pay this character in the
Yeah, I remember that.
movie.
Yeah, the fan castings. Yeah.
I remember everybody wanted Nikki Cox to be Mary Jane.
Oh man, Nikki Cox! I forgot about her. Teenage Nasser loved Nikki Cox.
I bet.
No, the only reason I remember her name is because of that Wizard issue. I don't, because I watched her shows and stuff, but like I didn't remember her name except for that Wizard issue.
Yeah, I do remember. The only thing I didn't like about Wizard, it did seem like they were pumping up certain books and be like, "This is the hot book, and it's worth this much."
I mean, that's what marketing is about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say to the counter to that, around the time that I was obsessed with getting Wizard every time, I would make sure every time the previous book came out to go to the green section and get one new thing at least each month and see what it was. And if I liked it enough, I'd buy it every single time. And there's one comic that to this day is one of the funniest comics I've ever read. And I have most of the run. I got to find other issues. And I would love to track down the creator of it. It's called The Seven Guys of Justice. And it's basically like the Justice League by way of the Tick, you know, and it's really, really good. I just want to describe one scene for you real quick from this comic. So there's this dude in this like full body costume, like Spider-Man, but with a cape. And it's got like all these kinds of like lines on it, these like geometrical shapes. And he's sitting there meditating and hovering above the ground. And this lady's sitting looking at him very annoyed. And she goes, well, he goes, hold on. There is some fate that's going to enter this room and it's negative. Somebody will die here. She goes, okay, Dr. Floorplan. All right, I get it. What's happening? Move that vase 2 feet to the right. And she moves it. Okay, now? No, I am the master of feng shui, and I still detect that death is coming to this room. And then, blam, right through the window. Bullet hits him in the head, and he falls down. She goes, damn, he was right. And I could never get over that scene. It's just so hilarious. I'm like, Dr. Floorplan, the master of feng shui.
I'm going to have to Google that now.
I've looked and it's barely anywhere on the internet. I'm going to pull all my issues out and scan them and do a video about it someday because I'm just like, people need to seek this out. It is so good.
Okay, now you just opened a can of worms. We need to, the three of us, go over this comic because now I'm intrigued for what you said.
It's so good.
Speaking of your videos, Kevin, I really like the ones that you were putting together a few months back for all the public domain characters.
Oh, yeah. I've been, for the past 2 or 3 years, I've been doing videos. I was doing about one a day pretty much until the past couple months because I've had a lot of stuff going on in my life and everything. It's been kind of tough. I just did one video to promote the wrestling book. But yeah, I did a bunch of public domain videos. Admittedly, because I was leading up to the announcement of the Kickstarter, but I did a bunch of public domain videos because there's just so much out there. I love the weirdness of the golden age. I love that there's so much out there that there were no rules yet, and they would just throw everything at the wall to see what stuck. You know what I mean? Same reason I like Victorian sci-fi because there was no rules. They would just throw everything at the wall to see, you know, maybe this will work.
Well, a lot of it too was just like, well, that worked for that company. We need our own version. So.
Oh yes, 100%. Like, okay, like you know, I mentioned to people before that pretty well known that Wonder Man was like the first character sued out of existence. You know, basically, DC said he was too similar to Superman. And even Will Eisner, who was hired to do the character, said, "Yeah, they told me do your own Superman." Now, if you describe him today, he sounds nothing like Superman. Like he had a magical ring that gave him powers, and he was an inventor, and he was nothing like Superman at all. But at the time, there was nothing else to compare it to. He was too similar, so they sued him, and they had to go out of business. But another one is Captain Yankee Doodle Jones. Sorry, not Captain. Say there you go. That's me messing it up. He's just Yankee Doodle Jones, but like clearly he's Captain America. I mean, clearly. But it gets worse because his origin is okay. There's this blonde guy, and there's this scientist, and the scientist injects him with this cool formula that's going to make him a hero. But then these Nazis break in and kill the scientist. Oh no! Now no one else can become that hero. Now, if this sounds familiar to you,
wait a minute, we saw a movie with that.
There is a difference because in this story, there was no scrawny Steve Rogers beforehand. Instead, there were 3 wounded veterans who volunteered their bodies to science. The scientists took them apart and put them back together as one blonde guy, which every time I tell people, they're like, oh, like Frankenstein? I'm like, well, kind of, except that when he was created, he goes, hiya, Doc, I'm ready. So it was the 40s. Science could do anything. And he doesn't have a shield. Instead, the formula made him invulnerable. So he's basically like the shield.
Yeah.
And this is so similar to Marvel that I think the only reason they didn't sue is because they didn't have the lawyers that DC had. But there's an issue of Captain America comics that came out shortly after this that has a full-page ad of Captain America pointing at the readers going, hey, kids, if you ever see anyone ripping off my stories, don't buy those comics.
Nice.
Oh, dude, that's
the public domain characters are just wacky, man.
Yeah, one of my favorites is the Eye. A lot of people see him. He gets shared around a lot. The one most people talk about is Stardust, but the Eye, he's literally just an eye, like an eye with eyelashes and everything, but it's just a giant floating eye. And he just appears, and his powers are everything. And so what'll happen is you'll have this this woman whose husband was killed by the mob, and the mob's threatening her, and she's undressing in her room by herself. She's still wearing her undergarments, and she's doing her hair. Suddenly the Eye appears and goes, "Be not afraid, I am the Eye. I will help you get revenge on the people who killed your husband." And she's like, "Okay." And then there's another issue where there's this little boy got kidnapped by the mob because the mob's doing all this kind of stuff. And he's tied to a chair, and the Eye appears, "Be not afraid, I am the Eye, and I'm here to help you." And the little boy goes, "Golly gee," and the Eye just turns people into salt and, makes them blow up and all kinds of other stuff, as you do. And there was another character called the Hand, who, as you may guess, was just a hand. He didn't talk, but instead he would write on the wall in flaming letters, "Be not afraid, I am the Hand." And these 2 characters are unrelated, by the way. They're not related characters at all.
How come they didn't team up?
They should have, because back then, no rules yet.
Okay, completely unrelated. I'm going to create the Foot.
Okay, there's probably another member of this family that was not included in family comics.
So speaking of public domain, tell us a little bit about how you came up with your idea for using public domain characters for your story.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually kind of funny. A friend of mine was a comic book, the guy who I know who has commissioned people to do covers for things, because he was a comic book store owner, and he would commission those store exclusive covers and stuff. And he told me one day, "Man, I wish it was like the Golden Age." And what he meant was, I wish we could sell millions of copies like they did in the Golden Age, because I'd make so much money.
Yeah.
But where my brain went was, what would it take for the Golden Age to happen right now? Well, that means that the Great Depression couldn't have happened. That means World War II couldn't have happened. Well, that means civil rights wouldn't have happened. That means there was a whole bunch of dominoes I started going through. And I end up with this whole story that I want to tell involving superheroes. This is not that story. This is the step before that story.
Okay.
But as I started building this, I started realizing I wanted to tell a story about basically about the history of the 20th century, essentially, and using these colorful characters as a way of examining it. And people have asked me if it's Watchmen. I'm like, it's not really Watchmen, because I'm not deconstructing the heroes. I'm not showing why heroes are bad. That's been done enough. I'm also not showing why they're great. That's been done as well. I'm just using them as a tool to tell this story about history. Mm-hmm. And so originally I had my own characters and stuff like that. And then I was like, if I'm doing a story about history, I need characters with history. And I also realized that I'm a teacher, and I also give talks about comic book history and stuff, and I never go in with the assumption that my audience knows the things I'm talking about. I'm not going to be like, well, you don't know exactly which issue Gambit first appeared on, which, by the way, is disputed. So I decided I needed the most straightforward characters ever. So I'm like, look, we got a shirtless guy with muscles. We got a guy with a flag on his body. We have another dude wearing dark clothing. This guy is running really fast. You know who these characters are. You don't have to have read any previous, even if you just have seen a commercial for a movie, you know who these characters are. Now, do they actually have their own stories? Yes. There's backstory. The cards give you a ton more backstory, but you don't need any of that to read the story. So I wanted to have characters that had history, so public domain. I wanted characters that were familiar, so specifically mostly ripoff characters, and the few ones that aren't, I made more ripoff than they would have been. Like my Hulk character is definitely not a ripoff of the Hulk. He was created 20 years earlier by one of the first female creators of comics, Tarpe Mills, but I wanted a character that filled that role, so it worked out. And so that kind of snowballed into its own thing, because then I went ahead and read every appearance of the characters that I might be interested in, and some of them were like, nope, I'm not using this guy anymore, too racist. And then I'd move on to others, and I would say, oh, I have to use this character now because of blank. Like, for example, the Hulk character. Those stories are nuts. There's only 12 issues. It's about 10 pages per issue, and it is one ongoing story from beginning to end. Each one's to be continued, and it goes it starts off with the monster versus the mob, as you do. Mobs are everywhere. But then it becomes him versus robot skeletons. But then the guy that builds the robot skeletons donates them to the giant monster so they can fight Nazis together. And then they
as you do.
Then they accidentally time travel, get into a sword fight with Shakespeare, a fist fight with Nero. And by the time they get back to the present day, this big dude gets a Medal of Honor from the government for killing a bunch of Nazis. Nice. So I'm like, this is a full story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Like, it's great. and others are just nuts because like that one, like I didn't need any of that backstory, but because his backstory was so cool, I can if you look at the book, you're going to see little robot skeletons in the background because they're there with him. It's not important to the story, but they exist.
So with you having to do all this research and then tweak the characters to serve your needs and kind of make your own new versions of them, how long till that germ of the idea started till we got issue 1?
Well, those are two different things. So the germ of the idea was like 10 years ago. And no, I'm somewhere between 5 and 10 years ago. I'm not good at time. Time and I don't get along. But as soon as I had the idea, I bought the website, World's War Comics. And as soon as I met Freddie Lopez Jr., I was like, he's going to do the cover. That has to be him. And this is before I had even the characters picked out. I was like, it has to be him. And he didn't know this yet. I found out later. So then once I said, no, I'm going to do this. From that to actually making it, reading all the characters and everything, probably 6 months.
Okay.
But I will say, the reason for that 6 months and not say a month is because I went too far. I have a file on the history of this world going back thousands of years for no reason. But my goal for this world, since I now had this public domain thing in it, was to make it mirror two things: the real world and comic book history. So if there is a major event in comic books, it's reflected in the history of this world. Okay. So there's an equivalent that happened with this person getting really powerful and getting almost destroying solar systems in the 70s. There was a major crisis thing that happened in the 80s, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's like this, and none of that's important. It's really not important. But that makes it when somebody asked me, give them more feedback, I was like, turns out I have the lore ready, so I made the cards.
Well, plus you have years and years of stories to go to if you want.
Yeah.
So,
which is why when I did issue number 1, I called it issue 1001, because it's the idea look, if they've been around since 1938, this is the number they'd be on, give or take. So,
So how many issues do you have this series planned for?
So for this one, I wanted to do 6 to tell the full story. The issue 2 gets to the actual story that my friend inspired me to do, and then that leads to some other things. But it's also one of those things that, if I had, here's the thing. It took me a while to put out this book because I'm a teacher. You talked about that earlier. How do you do multiple things? If I was just doing, if I had, even being a teacher, if I had an editor giving me instructions, like we need this by this date, it'll be in. I make deadlines, no problem. Maybe on the deadline, but I make the deadline. But when I give myself deadlines, that's really tough. Because I know the boss, and he's a softie. So I've done some other comics for other publishers. I've done the novel. We talked about it, mentioned briefly earlier. That's no problem. But when I'm working for myself, it takes time, and it's not because it's hard. It's because forcing myself to do it is hard, even though I love it.
Discipline is hard.
Yeah, I do want to mention one more thing though, real quick, while I talk about the characters. Is this guy right here, Dr. Science? The original character is Captain Science. But he has to be a doctor because that just makes more sense.
He went to school in between you getting hold of him.
Well, a couple things. Number one, a lot of his stories, he's only in like 8 stories, and most of them suck. But like 2 of them are really good because that's when Wallace Wood took over. Those were really good issues. But the thing is that I wanted a Doctor Strange character. And I realized that in a comic book universe, science is more powerful than magic. Because think about it. If Doctor Strange wants to time travel, he has to find the right artifact. He has to find the right spell. He has to pray to the right gods. He has to give up part of his soul. He has to, But if Tony Stark wants to time travel, he says, give me a weekend. So with that in mind, I'm like, all right, my Dr. Science is what he is. Also talking about things that I say too racist. The Streak, the original character is the Silver Streak. His origin, his sidekick's origin, his bird's origin, all racist. But the thing that made me say, oh, he is my speedster, is there are a couple issues written by a writer artist named Don Rico, who I was like, wow, when I saw it. There's a comic where this blonde guy and his blonde kid sidekick, are reading newspapers in New York, and they go, wait a minute, Black people are being lynched in the South? We got to do something about this. And they literally get up and run to the South and fight the KKK. They're called the Hyenas, but they are the KKK. Mm-hmm. And I was like, holy crap! Like this is unheard of at the time. It was like barely had Superman fighting the Klan in the radio, and that was by itself unusual. The Klan would get mentioned from time to time in comic books, but not in this level of like, look what they're doing currently now. Yeah. And then the next issue after that, the Silver Streak fights a capitalist who's trying to stop his workers from unionizing because he doesn't want them to be able to have be able to pay their rent and food. Wow. And literally it ends with the Silver Streak holding up that capitalist and saying right now, hey, remember the American way is making sure everyone has freedom. And if you don't believe in that, leave this country. And I was like, damn. So he's got to be my speedster. So cool. So on the back, I have like suggested readings. Specifically, those ones I suggest are okay.
Okay.
Wow, that is some crazy stuff. Well, since you did research on all this, now we want to talk about what we're here to talk about and promote, of course, is the book of Yes, Sir. Okay, so when you got approached, how was it? I mean, they just said, hey, we got these wrestlers that want to do a book. How was the pitched to you?
So apparently there's a company called the Master Public, which they basically represent a bunch of different wrestlers, mostly Mexican wrestlers. That, as far as I know, they do a lot of wrestlers all over the world and most of the U.S., but they have a lot of Mexican wrestlers in their wheelhouse. Yeah. In their area, whatever you want to call that. And I grew up with Santo movies. It's one of my favorite things. I love the idea. Like if you ever watch a Santo movie, he's got that silver mask on, but it never comes off. Like he wakes up in the morning, he's wearing it. He takes a shower, he's wearing it. He eats breakfast, he's wearing it. He answers the phone, he's wearing it. He's playing chess, he's wearing it. And it's like he's not. I have to explain to people, he's not hiding his identity. It's not like Peter Parker. He's showing you who he really is. And that's what those masks are for the luchas. Anyway, so they were looking for a writer, and one of the people there knew me, and they said, why don't we have him try out for it? So I tried out for it. And they pitched it to me, and one of the first conversations we had was like, well, here's some ideas of what he might look like without a mask on. And I'm like, wait, no. I'm sorry. If he's wearing a mask, it never comes off. And literally the guy from Master Public goes, see, he gets it. He gets it. He gets it. That was literally the conversation that happened.
And one of the earlier discussions we had was that like, they're going to be fighting monsters like in the old movies, so we should have them fighting classic movie monsters. And I said, well, I teach copyright to my kids in high school. If you want him to be fighting green skin, flat top Frankenstein, then you need to owe money to Universal, because they've gone after people for putting green skin, flat top Frankenstein in their stuff.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I said, what if instead I have him fighting creatures from Mexican folklore? And they're like, we'll get back to you. About a week later, they got back to me and they're like, hey, Kevin, we got an idea. What if you have them fighting creatures from Mexican folklore? I'm like, what a good idea you guys had. And so when I said Mexican folklore, there is no chupacabra in this book, nor will there ever be, because chupacabra is Puerto Rican. And people don't realize that. But yes, there's stories of him in Mexico, but it started in Puerto Rico. But so what I did is I went through a bunch of basically monks would write down oral tradition stories back in the early days of the colonies. So I read a lot of those to get some of the descriptions of creatures that indigenous people would describe, and those are the creatures in the book. So these are all creatures that are pre-Columbian, essentially. And there's a lot of stuff to be mined from that. There's a lot of stuff there that works really well. So it's kind of ties into the history. Plus, I also looked up the family. It's Dragon Lee, they're always to go on Rouge, 3 brothers, and their dad, who is now La Bestia del Ring, but previously was El Toro Blanco. And all 3 of them are from the same, small town in Mexico. So I researched that town. Nowhere in the book does it say the name of the town or even say Mexico, because I figure every kid reading it can decide where it is when they're reading it. But like I did a whole geography in my head based around that small town. I even found out that the month that Dragon Lee was born, there was an earthquake in his state of Mexico. So I tied that into the story.
Nice.
So yes, this is me doing too much research, but it leads to fun little bits of the story,
Were you a wrestling fan at all, or did you have to start watching to kind of get their luchador personalities? Or?
See, that's the trouble. I am a fan of the wrestling movies. I'm a fan of wrestling comics. I'm not anti-wrestling. I'm definitely a fan of wrestling, but I more love the lore around the wrestling than the wrestling itself. Like a lot of people say wrestling is soap opera. It is. And I like that part, but I'm not, I can never fault anybody for getting into it because like, dude, it's comic books, costumes.
Yeah, that's what I tell people,
names, action heavy fights and then drama in the background. That's exactly
good
what
versus
it is.
evil and stories and
I will say this much though. Years ago, I worked with what's her name, Gloria. Her husband was a famous wrestler who died. He was an alcoholic, and he died. But she's also part of the show, and she would play a heel on the WWE. Well, I guess now WWE. And I worked with her at a convention. And before I worked with her, I'm going to research her, so I went to go watch every video. And I see, okay, she's the bad guy, and I'm like, these are the good guys. They're like bullying her. There's the guys making fun of her dead husband, and there's like what the oh my gosh, I got a little freaked out by that. But yeah, that's the thing. But I'm a big fan of like the culture of luchadores, the culture of lucha libre, the culture of the legends behind the comics and the movies and the books and the cartoons. I have a big collection at home of like I said, I got rid of most of my old comic books. I keep the ones that aren't getting reprinted, and those are them. I have Santo and Blue Demon comics and those kind of things. I love those things.
So did you specifically have to research Dragon Lee and Rouge and stuff to learn more about their personalities?
I mean, I didn't get a lot of instruction on that, but of course I would do that. So I went back to watch their fights, and I went to look for what are their signature moves and what are their. Now, mind you, this is most of the boys as boys. Sorry, most of the men as boys.
Okay.
So they don't actually have them yet, but I wanted to kind of hint towards that in the way they move. So I definitely wanted to put that in there. And then for the dad, the tricky part for the dad is he's a rulo. He's a heel, right? So, but he's one of the good guys in the book. So how do I balance that? And they even told me, look, hey, don't break the kayfabe. Don't say he's faking it. So I don't, but I do have the kids point out that like, oh, but that's the good guy. He's going to come fight you. But I know my dad, it's okay. He can still take him, that kind of stuff. So I still have that kind of stuff, but I don't directly, contradict anything. And it was a blast. And now I get to see pictures of, which by the way, people ask me, I never got to meet them yet.
Oh,
someday.
wow.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I get to see pictures of them reading the book to their kids, so that's really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So, and then the one thing I haven't picked up the physical copy. You gave me a chance to read. Is it actually artwork inside as well, or it's just a
Yes,
novel?
so it's just like Harry Potter. There's one drawing per chapter.
Okay.
So it's like it's called what's called a middle grade novel,
Okay.
which means like say middle school through like early high school.
Gotcha. Okay.
I will say when I wrote it with a more realistic bent in mind, like aiming for a little bit older age group. My reasoning being that I look at my students at school, they always want to read something that is said to be too high for them. Like if it's above them, that's what they want to look at. That's the thing they want to do. That being said, I didn't get to see the art till I was done. So I think it's funny that I was drawing it really realistic or writing it really realistic. And then I see the art, which is really cute, which is great art. Don't get me wrong. I love this art. Martin is a great guy. But it's funny that I put all this effort into explaining why a 12-year-old would be allowed to go fight a monster. And I'm like, well, if I knew it was going to be that cartoony, it would have been just like, go fight the monster, 12-year-old,
Yeah.
But I think this works because it's like Adventure Time or something where it's like cartoony on the outside, but like has a lot of like depth on the inside.
Yeah.
Martin Puso was the artist out of Uruguay. So his stuff is there now.
See, one thing I did like about it is that it is bilingual. So one page is English,
Oh, yeah.
and then you can.
When they told me that, I was like, oh yes, this is perfect. This is exactly what we need. I've taught a lot of English language learners at school. Flat out, they asked me, hey, do you want to do the translation? And I said, you do not want that.
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah, my Spanish is like Tarzan's English. Me hungry, where food? And yes, I've read the book. I know he speaks more in the book, but the thing is that if I had a book like this when I was a kid, I'd have much better Spanish today.
Sadly, yeah.
You guys would know if you're close to my age. I'm usually the oldest guy in the room. So my dad's generation was a generation that would get a ruler to the hand if you spoke Spanish in school.
Mm-hmm.
So my grandparents, whose first language was Spanish, they made a big effort to only speak English at home. As a result, my dad and my uncles, they don't speak great Spanish, but they speak Spanish. But none of my cousins on my dad's side, or that are from the 80s, are bilingual. Mm-hmm. Now, what's interesting is that the next generation on, 90s on, if you were born then, they made a big effort, at least in South Texas, of teaching kids bilingually. So those kids were like encouraged to be bilingual. But our generation, they just didn't care. The generation before us, they would punish. Generation that I was in, they didn't. There was no effort.
No, because my grandma always said the same thing. She said that as soon as I started going to school, I spoke Spanish very, very well. And as soon as I started going to school, it was frowned upon for me to speak Spanish at school. So, like you said, yes, they did hit us on the hand to tell us to speak English. And then literally I understand it. I can't speak it. I take some time to process it to come out, but I can speak a little bit.
I can read it. I can understand it. If you speak to me slowly, I got it. I'm with you. If you go fast, I'm lost. I found out I could read Portuguese, mainly because I thought it was Spanish I was reading. I was just like, there's a lot more accents here than I'm used to, but I'm okay. But I can't understand it if I'm hearing Portuguese. I'm lost there. I actually had a friend that in his 20s was living with his mother who only spoke Spanish, and he'd forgotten how to speak Spanish. I was like, how do you live with her? And oh my gosh, But my point is that like a lot of my students would be like, they wouldn't believe me that I had such bad Spanish because they're a different generation, there's different kids. Yeah. But I keep telling them, and I've had some parents too that are like from Mexico that would tell me, don't encourage my kids to speak Spanish. Tell them they should only be speaking English. And I tell them, no, if they do both, they will make more money. Yeah. If they are bilingual, whatever job they get, they will make more money. And I'd have to tell several parents that who would did not want their kids speaking Spanish. I'd be like, no, they should do both. Like just because my Spanish sucks doesn't mean theirs should be.
Yeah, especially if they're here in Central and South Texas.
Yeah, so. My wife is from Laredo, and she's pushing me more now to start to speak, and it's a little bit coming out here and there, learning from her. But yeah, it's taken a while to get used to learning the proper way to speak, so but yeah, I agree. I feel I should learn more.
I've learned something recently, according to TikTok. Apparently, I speak Chicano English. Have you guys heard that lately?
Yes, I have heard of that.
That's been going around TikTok a lot, and my fiance, she's from Dallas, and she has family in Louisiana, and she gets frustrated with me sometimes where I'll say like no, yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, why'd you say no? I'm like, because I agree with you, and apparently these are features of Chicano English, and so now whenever I start saying something, she's like, oh, Chicano English.
Well, yeah, when I go to other states and people are like, "Oh, you're from Texas," and I'm like, "How? I didn't think I had a twang or an accent, but apparently to other people we do."
So my dad's family is Mexican American, right? My mother's family is of Scottish descent, and those kids growing up in the 70s, they were like, "Oh, you're learning a new language! Congratulations!" So there were I have bilingual cousins on my mom's side, but when I went to go visit family in Kansas in middle school, there was people, not my family, but other people in town that would meet me, and this other kid my age goes, "You're Mexican, ain't you?" And I was like, how? Like, how did you just look? What? I mean, I know you're being racist, but thank you. I feel seen, but I found out later that apparently there was a whole community there in the small town nearby that was founded by migrant workers in the 70s. And like the new generation looks and sounds like me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're everywhere.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So I wanted to ask you about the book, Kevin. If this one does well, or is there plans to make it a series, like we were saying, like the Dave Pilkey books or the Amulet books or anything like that?
Yeah, well, we'd love to do like probably 2 or 3 books. I know they also would love to have a cartoon series or something later on, built off the lore of this book, I would assume. But yeah, that's definitely the idea, and I definitely have way more creatures that are native Mexican creatures that I would want to include. This one had some more inhuman monsters. The next ones would have more human monsters. That kind of stuff.
So I was going to ask, when you mentioned that you went to read some of these things about the monks, how did you know where to go look?
Well, a couple different ways. Number one, I have a giant library at my house of just I collect things, but specifically one of the there's a whole shelf of my a couple shelves actually that's all Mesoamerica essentially.
Oh, wow.
Everything from generic like here's a list of gods to I have a whole book that's nothing but research essays on Tezcatlipoca.
Oh, wow.
But there is a writer who I'm sure you guys may have heard of called David Bowles. Do you guys know who that is?
No, I don't.
So he's a professor in Brownsville, David Bowles. He's also my editor at some of the comics I've done.
Oh, wow.
But he is an expert in Chicano studies, but also mythology, and he also teaches Nahuatl and other languages. And he did a book which basically called The Mexican Bestiary, and that wasn't my only source, but I'm like, it was a helpful thing to have. Here's a list of creatures to look at.
Wow.
And then I'd go and find I never trust the first source I see. Nothing against David Bowles, but I always go deeper. So like, just because like there's a wiki of public domain heroes doesn't mean I'm going to use what it says in the wiki. I go and check the comic. I'm going to read every part of that comic first. So I go to David Bowles' book. I was like, this is a good character. Let me see what it says in the original stories. And I went to go digging for where those first references were. Luckily, it's public domain because it's 500 years old. So a lot of it's on Google Books, and some of them I own. Some of them I actually own translations of in my house of those books.
Whoa.
I love. There's something I tell people about why I don't trust the wikis. Sometimes this is years ago. It's gotten better since, I'm sure, but years ago I was given a talk on Aztec gods and stuff. By the way, I say Aztec. People will correct me on that. That is the common term used both in science and in culture. But yes, Mexica and others. Technically, when we say Aztec, we're not talking about the Mexica. We're talking about the entire Triple Alliance. But anyway, I was given a talk on that. And I was like, I want to do a quick refresher before I talk, because I talk off the cuff. I don't have a script. And I opened up a Wikipedia on this character. And as I'm scrolling down, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that before. I feel like that would have come up. What's the source on this? I go down to the source. The source was an out-of-print book. I own that book. So I went back to go get the book. I went to the page. It said nowhere on that page did it say the stuff in that Wikipedia entry. They just picked something they figured who's going to check, right? So yeah, I always double check my sources. In fact, I even had somebody come and quiz me once because I had a book on the founding of Tenochtitlan, which I want to go back and redo one of these days. And they were like, well, what research did you do for this? And I started like listing off. Well, I went to this translation and this early text, and I went to this the actual codice that has it. Now I have a copy of the codice at home, and she's like, okay, like I guess I passed her test.
That's good. Good for you.
Well, okay. Since you're bringing this stuff up, and you love Namor and you wrote it,
Yeah.
you wrote that, and my question is, okay, I love the movie. Some people didn't like it. I liked where they took it. The look on your face, I'm kind of like, but no, just the whole Aztec premise of it. I kind of liked where they were doing with that. I'm not familiar of that, but I just found it intriguing. And now your opinion.
So I'm laughing because thank you very much for inviting me on your podcast. I am also a co-host on My Primo's podcast, which after you're done listening to this, go listen to My Primo's podcast.
It's great. I listened to it. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we had a whole episode on Wakanda Forever, and it's about an hour and 20 minutes long. And for about 45 minutes of it, I'm ranting about Namor. Because okay, so to be clear, I have both written his life story we talked about a second ago, and I've written about Mesoamerica. Yes. And 100% making Namor Mesoamerican works flat out. Specifically, the original creator Bill Everett did not want him to be from Atlantis. If you read all the old comics for the first 30 years of his 20 years, for the first 20 years of his existence, he was universally said to be from an underground city. Undersea people, the undersea city, that kind of thing. It was not underground, undersea, underwater, and never called Atlantis. It was called Atlantis once in the 40s, not by him, but by Alan Bellman, who's another guy I interviewed before.
Had him at Texas Comic Con.
He was such a delight. I'll tell you about that later. But when Stan Lee took over writing, he's just Namor's from Atlantis, and it just stuck that way. Right?
Excelsior!
Yes, exactly. But the creator said that he didn't want to call it Atlantis because it's whatever you wanted it to be. And now, from a modern perspective, we're like, oh, he's being very inclusive. He probably he was more of like cool magical stories, whatever magic. But it doesn't matter. The end result is the same. In fact, the only thing that matters is that Atlanteans aren't white. And the reason I say that is because literally, Namor #1 says the very last panel, and he continued his war against the white man. So that's the only requirement. And in fact, one thing that pissed people off is I'll say Namor in the videos a lot, and people are like, no, it's Namor. And I'm like, well, if you want to be authentic to the comics, he says Imperius Rex, which is fake Latin. He worships Neptune, which is a Roman god. He would speak it with a Latin accent. He would not say Namor. He would say Namor. But in the movie, by the way, they say it at least 3 different ways. I have a whole video using clips from the movie that they do not just say Namor. He says Namor. The Wakandans say Namor, and then his people, when they're saying, they never say his name in Yucatec Maya, but when they say Namora, they go Namora, and it's different from the way his name is said. So all that works. I have no problem with that. That's good. In fact, in the recent comic that came out, just the Namor series that just ended last month, they actually established Talokan existing in the Marvel Universe in exactly one panel and never mentioned again. So whatever. But what didn't work is everything else. In Wakanda, we have this country that was untouched by colonizers. And look at all the beautiful things they have. And yet we see this Mayan culture. And in 500 years, they've had 0 development. They still have stone buildings. They still don't have lights. They're using the exact same handwriting from the year 700. Like, imagine if we today were still writing like the people who founded the Declaration of Independence or whatever. Like, the handwriting's the same. Nothing changed. And you're like, well, they have some technology. They have those breathers. But then we see his mother dying hundreds of years ago. They still had the breathers. So that has not changed. Oh, well, they got the big glowing ball, but he says out loud he crushed it with his hands, and it. No, that's not science. And then on top of that, what's his name? What do they call him?
Yeah. Okay.
Kukulkan.
Yeah.
I read, as we've said before, a lot of 1930s and 40s fiction, and pretty much any fiction from, like, say, 1880s through 1950s and 60s, a little bit, but mostly that era. If you see any reference to Mesoamerica, it is always in the sense of anything they don't understand is a god. Anything they don't understand is a god. And they just flat out said, oh, the one powerful member of our people, it's a god. It's him. He's a god. And then so many things bothered me. Then I read the script. Most of my problems, except for one, which I didn't mention yet, most of my problems were addressed in the script. In the script, Shuri, the smartest person in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, says she can't understand the water bomb. She's like so fascinated by the technology. She has trouble understanding how it works. When she's visiting, they talk about that big glowing light up there. And it says, number one, it has a name. And number two, it was built by scientists who are in the script saying the Talakanil scientists discuss things with Shuri. They had scientists? We didn't see this. And it gets better. His name isn't Kukulkan in the script. It's one of his titles. He has an actual name. There's nothing wrong with having the title of a god as long as they don't think he actually is that god. But, oh my Lord, so many things.
I did not know this.
The one thing that script doesn't fix is my most personal issue with it. People used to ask me a lot, who's your favorite character? And I would say Namor. And I gave you a bunch of reasons earlier why he'd been my favorite character, but there's another reason. In my view, Namor is the best example in all of comics of what it feels like to be a mixed race. Wow. People make a big deal about Miles being, Afro-Latino, which, by the way, he's not Afro-Latino because his dad's black, because there's Afro-Latinos all over Latin America,
True.
But yeah, he's from Black culture and from Puerto Rican culture, Black American culture and Puerto Rican culture. And, but everybody celebrates it. Everybody's like, you're both things, Miles. You're Black and you're Puerto Rican. Congratulations. And that's cool. I love it. Don't get me wrong. But that's not what it actually feels like. But Namor, he's had to fight for respect every step of the way. He's never blue enough for the blue people. He's never surface enough for the surface people. In this comic that I have my stuff in, it shows him as a child being tortured by his grandfather because he's just not sea person enough,
Wow.
And I'm like, I can associate with that. I was never Mexican enough growing up in Brownsville. I was not white enough when I would go visit Kansas. I know what that's like. That's removed. Instead, everybody loves him. Everybody from his own people love him. They worship him literally like a god.
Yeah.
And that bothers me. And I would hope next time he appears, which apparently is going to be Doomsday, that they can at least address most of that stuff that annoyed me. That part could still be addressed. They don't say who his dad is.
Yeah.
You could say that his dad was already a water breather before they met his mom. You can just flip the genders around. That's no big deal. But that part doesn't get addressed. So, by the way, my fiance is Black. So we left Wakanda Forever. She's crying. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. And I'm trying everything I can to not say anything for a little bit because it was a beautiful movie. It was really good.
Yeah.
But the way Namor was presented, and not him specifically, but the way the people were presented bothered me so much. I was looking for that technology. In the comic books, Atlantis and Wakanda are on equal levels of technology. Wow. Here, stone buildings and one light source for the whole city. And that really bothered me.
See, I never read the comics for Namor, and I went into this movie open-minded. And
how dare you? I'm kidding.
No,
that's not fandom.
Well, because it wasn't a character that drew me in before, and I came out, people were like, "Oh, he's a bad person." No, I understand why he did what he did.
Yeah,
and I liked the premise, just like you said. Us being Mexican, but not Mexican enough, or because our color of our skin, and my name, of course, is Terrazas, and it's one of those unique names. And anytime they hear that name, they automatically think you should be speaking Spanish. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can now.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
For some reason, it sounded like you were moving farther away down
Oh,
the
okay,
tunnel.
okay. Yeah, no, and no one thinks I speak Spanish, so they think I should because of my name. And I'm like, but yeah, that's where I felt that you mentioned. But now I wish I would have known what you known as I watched this movie. But I can see what you're saying, the technology part. If you knew that, you would.
I've got the podcast downloaded so I could hear the whole rant.
Yeah, I'm gonna listen to it tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, what I did is I actually cut out all the parts of me ranting and I put them as 5 parts on my TikTok channel because it's just like it was a big rant. And I felt bad for the other guys there, but they were getting into it because they were going back with me and back and forth. It was fun, but like
Yeah.
still.
No, you opened my mind. I mean, you made me see things I didn't notice that I didn't even think about
Because
because I didn't.
the
read
designs of his outfit were beautiful. The actor seemed well cast, although I know there's controversy about him behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I really love. You know, people are like, well, maybe they could have a Namor spinoff, and there was rumors that there might be issues of like rights around the name. Well, they had issues with the Hulk name, but they had a She-Hulk show. I would love a Namora show. You know, that'd be really great with an indigenous lead. That'd be amazing. You know, but like,
Can we get some new warriors with Namorita?
yeah, oh my God, that'd be amazing.
Dude.
No,
That would
but
be
like I said, it's just, and the thing is, if you go back and read the more modern comics, every single artist draws Atlantis differently. There's no one culture that it's based on. Yeah, Kirby made it look like this idealized Roman, you know, thing, but other artists drew it looking Arabian. Other artists draw it looking completely alien. There are actually comics where Atlantis looks Mesoamerican from the 80s. I found them. I dug for them, but I found them. You know,
Wow.
they exist. You know, and so there is no one culture for Atlantis. So any culture you give it, it doesn't change the story. But when they didn't do the story justice, in my view, that bothered me. And it's not unfixable. I just wish it was better presented. It wouldn't have cost them any more time in the movie. Well, putting the extra scene about Shuri experimenting on the thing would have been like 5 more minutes, I guess. But like other than that,
No, I
you
mean
know.
that's. I can see where you're saying since you read the script part of it. Yeah, because it's like it made you think like, how can that water bomb be so powerful? You know, to make the damage it was doing, and it just looked like it was just a thing of water. And it's like it made me think in the movie as I was watching it, like, how is that doing what it's doing? And it's just water, you know. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Next time I watch it, I'll be like, I'll have these things in mind now.
I'm sorry. I know. But you want to hear something really bad? I've actually given whole talks on why I don't like Endgame.
How dare you? This interview's over.
I know. No, like, don't get me wrong. The movie has a few of my favorite scenes in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. But as a whole, I don't like Endgame.
Wow. Well,
It's-
that's
it's-
another
it-
podcast in
It's
itself.
it's one of the few sequels that made me dislike the first part more because of it.
Wow.
Okay.
Now,
Is there a
now-
podcast episode about that one so I can download
Yeah.
that one?
There is. We keep threatening it. We haven't done it yet. I did do an online Comic-Con once where they're like, you got some weird topics, and I gave them a bunch, and I said, well, I can also do this. They're like, oh, do that. So the whole time I give the talk, we got in the chat, everybody's like, what? No.
Oh man, that is crazy. So okay, getting back to your book. I'm sorry, we got off track with Namor. I shouldn't have asked that question.
As I tell my students all the time, it's very easy to get me off track. Go for it.
So are you going to be doing book signings for this? Are you doing a tour at all? What's the
Well, no tour right now. I've got a few things I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be doing book signing at my school soon.
Oh, nice.
But yes, yeah, my cat over there meowing away. She's an elderly cat. She wants attention constantly. I'll be at Comic Palooza, probably doing signings. Definitely, I'll be there giving talks.
Sweet.
Let me see where I got coming up. I have to kind of look at it because I've got a bunch of things, but most of what I have coming up is in the fall.
Okay.
Might do SDCC, probably do Greater Austin Comic Con. See, checking on that. Definitely going to be doing having the book available at Texas Latino Comic Con in Dallas. That's going to be in August.
Nice.
Yeah, Sushi apparently wants to go as well. Yes, my cat. I'll be doing oops, wait a minute, I forgot about one. I'm going to be doing Nerd Night in Austin
Oh, when's that?
Yeah, when is that? I have it on my schedule here somewhere.
NASA, are we going?
I don't know. It's the
Yeah,
first
because
I hear of it.
at Nerd Night, I will be doing talking about. I don't see it on my calendar, but I will be doing it this summer. Nerd Night is once a month in Austin. They get people together to talk about the same basic topic. I'll be talking about some Mesoamerican artifacts, real world artifacts, and some of the history behind them. And I will have the book available while I'm there.
Wow.
Yeah.
You got me
And
interested, sir.
I don't know what date that is. I don't have it on my calendar yet. I have to talk to those guys again. But either way, I'll be doing that, and a few other conventions too.
November 15th, if you'd like to come out to Casa, we'd love to have the book there.
I was going to say, anybody else wants to invite me? And and I've got a few others. Actually, there's a little convention happening in Seguin, which I'm actually really excited about.
Oh yeah, I heard about that one.
Yeah, it's called Mockingbird Lane, and it's going to be in September. And it's because I think Eddie Munster himself is going to be kind of help put on the convention. So they're naming it after the home of the Munsters.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I'll be there too, giving some talks and with some books. So there you go.
Sweet. Well.
Oh, as far as the World's War Comics, I mentioned earlier, that's on Global Comics with an X.com and also Indie Planet, Indie with a Y.com. Global Comics has it digitally for sale, and Indie Planet has it physically for sale. You get it print on demand ordered.
And do you have any plans for when you'll be going to Kickstarter with issue 2?
Well, it was originally going to be this past March, but life got in the way, so that happens. I will say that this artist who you may have heard of, Freddie something, yeah, he has already done a cover for me, so I'm actually pretty excited. Yeah, Freddie Lopez Jr. has already done a cover. Let me see if we pull it up here. We've just been doing a little tiny,
I gotta get
blurry
Freddie on next.
picture. Yeah, I know, right? You really do. Where is this thing? There it is. Freddie has already done a cover for issue 2, which you can barely see what's going on.
Oh,
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm already putting it together. I've got an artist lined up. Ray Garza, who did the great art on the first issue, he told me from the beginning that he could only do one issue, other reasons as well,
Yeah.
before we even started. So actually, as I keep going, maybe I can just do a different artist each time. Again, if I had somebody in charge of me, giving me due dates, I'll be like, here's the script. I'll talk with the artist. We'll get it set up, blah, 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 blah. But I need the structure. Like I did a comic for Chispa Comics that's going to be coming out.
I was actually going to bring that up.
Yeah.
The Coneja, right?
Coneja, yeah, it was supposed to have come out a year ago, but there was behind the scenes issues, nothing to do with Coneja or me. So they had to switch publishers, and now they're going to be publishing again with a new publisher. So
that's why I couldn't find it. I was trying to read it before we came on, and I found a bunch of the other 13 Origins books, but couldn't find that one.
I think about 8 of them, if I remember correctly, have been published. The last batch haven't been because, again, there were issues behind the scenes. They're now with a new publisher, and once that gets ready to go, they're going to put them all out. It's done. It's been done. They had really great art, but still.
Okay, so we're going to be wrapping up pretty soon. Do you have any other questions, Nasser? Because I got one more.
No, actually, I was going to ask about Coneja because, I had seen that they were available on the library's Hoopla app, and there's 8 of them, but not the other ones.
So it is, hey, I pulled the number 8 out of my butt, so I was correct. Okay. They're supposed to be, mine's number 13, so.
Okay.
And that was on purpose, not because I wanted to be last, but because they gave me a list of characters. Who would you want? And one of them said Latina Squirrel Girl, and I go, that one. I want to do Latina Squirrel Girl. Nice. So it's basically the personality she's got, but the powers of a rabbit. Sorry.
Cool.
Oh, nice.
And just before we go, I wanted to say you got some great covers on the first issue of World War. The David Lujan cover is awesome.
Yes. Yeah, David, he's great. He's got this great Narita comic, which is amazing. Yeah. He does this dreamlike but very super realistic art. Mm-hmm. And for each of the covers, I'd give it, like I told Freddie, make it look like a World War II propaganda poster. Mm-hmm. Carrie Callan, who does really great online, whenever you see parodies of World War II comics, it's him.
Yeah, I was going to say that cover was great. I love
and
that
so
one.
So I sought him out and said, hey, can you make it look like a World War II propaganda comic book? And he first drew it. They were all angry, and I was like, "But it's the '40s." And he's like, "Can I have them smiling?" I'm like, "Of course." So and then Marcus Newsom I met in San Diego. He's a California-based artist who does a book called Lightning Strike, And I asked him to make it look kind of ready for the 90s. And I thought that did a good job. But with David, I didn't give him any instruction at all. I just said, these two characters are left. Can you do something cool with it? And my Lord, did he knock it out of the park. So
Yeah, he does great stuff. He was at Casa last year, and he'll be there again this year.
yeah.
Well, my last question is, if you had the opportunity, like you mentioned, you would go back to Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing a lot of miniseries, 5-issue arcs,
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Would you go back and do a Namor that fills in either the holes for the movie or something in that aspect? Would you do something like that?
Honestly, there are so many times where they change a character in the comics to match the movies. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Blade was certainly made better for it. Blade is a way better character. Now, he wasn't a bad character before, but he's so much more interesting now. They made him more like the Blade in the movies.
Yeah.
Eternals is hit or miss. I think that they've, because they changed the genders and stuff of the characters, it actually added a new part to the lore, which had not been there before, like the explaining how that happened. Added some really cool stuff to it. Although, it was honestly the most recent Eternals run, seek it out. It wasn't very well read. It ended way too soon, but it was really well done. Really well done. And if they wanted me to do, explain how Namor could be Mesoamerican, I've got that ready to go. It's in the chamber. I'm ready to explain. Number one, like there is a Mesoamerican, there's an Aztec goddess named Atlantona, who is a goddess of water. And we know nothing about her other than her name and that she's a goddess of water.
Wow.
Like that, lends itself right there, But at the same time, I'm like, Marvel does a lot of Marvel Voices comics where it's like all these little minor characters that no one's ever heard of, and let new people give a shot with it. And I already have told people several times which character I would want. It's a Latino character from the 90s who no one has ever heard of. He appeared in 2 issues of Hellstorm. So
I don't remember who that could be.
Yeah.
So Hellstorm, if you don't know, he's the son of Satan, and he had this a series, and I was going to say miniseries because it was technically an ongoing series in the 90s, and it was just like the son of Satan dealing with demons and the possessed, and it was very much they're trying to do their own like Hellraiser type stuff, and it wasn't quite to that level. Although the ones written by Warren Ellis are really good. But in 2 issues, they introduce a new character named Soulfire, who basically looks like if you crossed the Hulk, Wolverine, and Ghost Rider, and then just had him wear bandages on his legs and has boobs out, like he's just big muscular guy with spikes everywhere and a flaming skull for a head. He's the most over the top 90s character you've ever seen. Even his skull for a head, he doesn't have a lower jaw because the upper jaw has fangs that go down to here, and it wouldn't even make sense. So he looks so ridiculously 90s.
Oh my god! I just pulled up a picture.
Here's why I like him, because in his 2 issues, he is the most chill, laid-back character I've ever read from a 90s comic. Like, he's fighting this demon-possessed woman, and she's like, "Oh, you hurt me." And he's like, "Oh, sorry, lady. You okay?" And then, like, another part, he's like, "Hurry, get me that flaming thing." "Oh, man, I just be at home playing Nintendo right now." And then after the whole battle's over and the cops are there, it's a cop just standing next to this 8-foot-tall guy with a flaming skull. The cop's like, "What happened here?" And the 8-foot-tall guy goes, "Don't ask me, man." And I'm like, this guy is so chill with being forced to transform into a massive monster. And then the fact that the only other in-panel appearance he's had since the 90s is 1 issue of Avengers, in which Doctor Strange lost the right to be Sorcerer Supreme, and they showed like 60 other characters that could be Sorcerer Supreme, and he's one of them.
Nice.
I can only imagine that he just goes to everybody he knows, and he's like, I was almost Sorcerer Supreme once.
That's hilarious.
I would just love to write this character. I mean, they always say they don't have enough Latino characters. Let's get this guy going. He's ready. Plus, both of his creators, the writer and the artist, are also Latino. Lynn Kamansky is a co-writer, but like the main writer who created him and then the artists were Latino. So like this guy's got the bona fides, man. He's ready to go.
Man, dude, I didn't know about these characters. I love that we brought you on because you have opened my mind to looking at Namor differently. you maybe want to look at this character now because now
Kevin's
I'm
an
gonna have Nasser send me-
encyclopedia, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Nasser send me that photo and find where he got it from. But
literally,
yeah, no.
literally, when I'm at a table and somebody walks by. Oh, by the way, real quick, I was at South Texas Comic Con. This guy walks
yeah.
by, looks at my sign, looks at me, squints really hard, and he goes, "I'm sorry, I don't know who you are." And I'm like, "That's okay. I don't expect you to." But anyway, when people come by and they're just kind of casually interested, I'm like, "Look, give me a Marvel character. I'll probably tell you something weird about him." Okay. So somebody asked me, "Well, is it true that Mystique is Nightcrawler's dad?" And I go, "Yep, it's true. Mystique is Nightcrawler's dad and sort of his mom." But did you know that Mystique is canonically Sherlock Holmes in the Marvel Universe? Like actual canon. She is Sherlock Holmes. Like there's a real Sherlock Holmes and it was Mystique.
What?
What? I did
Do
not
you
know
know off the
this.
top of your head what
So-
issue that happened?
It's been hinted throughout since the beginning because it's the real name of Destiny. Destiny, her wife, is Irene Adler. That is the female detective who is the rival to Sherlock in the old books. And when they show the flashbacks and she's dealing with her rival, Sherlock goes behind the panel, comes back, and it's Mystique. So Mystique was canonically Sherlock Holmes in the Marvel Universe, and that was something that Chris Claremont had been hinting at since the beginning. Now they've never actually fully said, by the way, she's Sherlock Holmes, but she's Sherlock Holmes.
That's awesome.
Dude, did you know this, Nasser?
No, man. I don't know the minutia like Kevin does.
Wow.
So this is a useless power, but it's
That's what I'm saying. Is this a party trick? What you do with friends?
Oh, dude. Okay. I'm going to have you back on because, dude, we haven't even cracked. I mean, we were going to talk about Free Comic Book Day. We were going to talk about, the convention you were at this weekend. We didn't even get there. It was awesome talking about this. I want to know more. I'm interested. I'm going to go look up these things you talked about. So,
please go to KevinGarcia_com on either Instagram or TikTok.
definitely.
Even
Oh,
though
yeah. I'm following you now for sure. I have been following you, looking at your stuff.
Even though I haven't posted some new videos, except for the one promoting Dragon Lee, which, by the way, I just realized we've been talking about it and we didn't out loud say the name of the book. Dragon Lee and the Monster of Salty River, which is just a literal translation of the name of a river by their hometown.
Wow.
And let people know where they can find the book, Kevin.
Which is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. But other than the video I did about that, I haven't done a new video in about a month. But I'm still reposting old videos.
Okay.
And I've got a ton of old videos.
Wow.
So I'll be doing new videos soon. But please check those out.
Yes.
That's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I already mentioned the World's War Comics is on Global Comics and Indie Planet. I am there. I'm also at My Primo's Podcast, which, again, listen to this first, and then go also check out My Primo's Podcast.
Yes.
We had a really good episode recently with Jules Rivetta. She's a friend of mine for a long time. She does really great, hilarious art, and she's a wonderful character.
Well, we want to thank you again for coming on. Nasser, thank you for coming on as a guest again.
Hey, thanks for having
we
me.
we got to make this official between me and you, interviewing comic artists and writers.
Yeah, man. Whenever you want me.
It's fun. Again, guys, we're gonna put the links below where you can get your hands on the books, and then check out his other podcast as well. And thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you so much, Kevin.